Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the City of Saskatoon's 2021 Remembrance Day program. Like all aspects of our lives, over the past 20 months, we have continued to adapt to the ongoing impact of COVID-19. The focus of November 11th services is the recognition of our generations of both military and RCMP members who have served in conflicts overseas. We cannot fail, however, to recognize the tireless efforts of our health professionals as they continue to provide care for the thousands of Saskatchewan citizens and their families who have been affected by COVID-19. Our thoughts are with all of those impacted by this pandemic. November the 11th and the Act of Remembrance is not about a place or a building. Rather, it is about a moment each year where all Canadians, regardless of their location, stop, reflect, and pay tribute. The focus of November the 11th is the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, when we all should pause to remember those few who have sacrificed on behalf of so many. The legacy of our First World War, Second World War, and Korean War veterans has left lasting images that we will always associate with November the 11th. They will never be forgotten. The nature of military service, however, has changed significantly since these early conflicts. The role of our new generation of service members, their experiences, and their legacy is also significant as they have responded to the changing realities of our world. The recent deployment of the Canadian Armed Forces Health Services personnel to hospitals across Canada to assist in the care of COVID-19 patients is an example of our military's evolving expectations of service. Our veterans, they live amongst us. They are part of our community fabric, and November 11th is the day that we come together to recognize their contribution to Canada. Veterans Affairs Canada estimates that there are over 640,000 veterans in Canada, of which there are less than 40,000 Second World War and Korean War veterans alive today. 2021 is also a special year. It is the 100th anniversary of the issuance of the first poppy. The poppy that adorns lapels of millions of people each year. Not only is it our way of showing respect to the fallen, but also has raised millions of dollars of donations through the Poppy Fund campaign. Monies used directly to support programs for veterans and other worthy causes.
100 years ago, an inspiring woman had a vision. A bright red poppy to honor veterans who lost their lives in the First World War, and to help raise support funds to help others in the aftermath.
The idea was conceived by Madame Anna Guérin of France, sparked by John McCrae's poem In Flanders Fields. Anna had originally founded a charity to help rebuild war-torn regions of France after the First World War.
Poppies made of fabric were sold to help her charity. She presented the concept to France's allies, including the Great War Veterans Association in Canada, which later became the Royal Canadian Legion. The idea was adopted, and the poppy symbol made its first appearance in Canada on July 6, 1921, the year of the first poppy campaign to support our veterans. To mark the symbol's 100th anniversary in 2021, the Royal Canadian Legion produced a replica of the original fabric pin.
The familiar image has come to reflect the sacrifices of fallen Canadian veterans from all arms of the military and from all missions, including 2 world wars, Korea, Afghanistan, Bosnia, peacekeeping duties, and other assignments.
Canada's Parliament entrusted the Legion with the exclusive right to use the poppy as the nation's symbol of remembrance and to safeguard its image, a pledge it honors today.
100 years later, the symbol is unmistakable. Its meaning still deep.
The Poppy of Remembrance honors sacrifice. The Poppy of Remembrance cries, "Never again." The The poppy of remembrance reflects solace and support.
Anna Guérin's vision lives on.
To learn more about how the Legion helps veterans, visit legion.ca.
Donations collected during the Poppy Fund campaign are held in trust for distribution. During the past 10 years, over $1.2 million has been raised in Saskatoon. For example, funds have supported the Sherbrooke Veterans Village, Legion Manor, as well as the Saskatchewan Health Authority's institutions for diagnostic equipment, used for veterans and other citizens alike. Your donation each year for a poppy or a wreath goes a long way to supporting veterans right here in Saskatoon. As part of our ongoing commitment to learn more about our veterans, we are joined by 4 past and present service members who live amongst us. They represent thousands more veterans who have served from Saskatoon and area. 2021 is of specific note, as it is the 30th anniversary of Canada's participation in the First Gulf War. During this conflict, close to 5,000 personnel from Canadian Armed Forces contributed to the coalition's defeat of Iraqi forces who had invaded Kuwait. 2021 is also the 30th anniversary of Canada's initial deployment on United Nations and later NATO operations in the former Republic of Yugoslavia. From 1991 to 2000, over 40,000 Canadians served in this volatile region. 2 of our veterans interviewed today participated in those conflicts. Our veterans were asked why they joined, a summary of their service, and some of their more memorable moments. They were also asked why Remembrance Day is important, and what was their most memorable November the 11th.
My name is Al Boyce, warrant officer retired, served in the Canadian Armed Forces in the air element from 1968 to 1994. One of the reasons I joined the military was there used to be a lot of advertisements out there saying, join the military, see the world. So I said, what better place to go? And my father had served in the Army during the Second World War, so I said, I think maybe I should try this too. So off I went to basic training, got selected to be an aircraft technician, finished my basic training, went to trade school in Camp Borden, Ontario. And my first posting out of finishing trade school was to South Germany. I served with 4th Service Battalion Maintenance Company, Aircraft Platoon, and we did the maintenance on the Hillers and the L-19s. The Hillers and L-19s were to support the artillery and the Armored Corps. Lo and behold, I got there and I was only there for about 6 months, and the Canadian Forces, or the Canadian government I should say, decided they were going to close those bases and the Army was going to move down with the Air Force. I was just a young private and they said, no, you're going back to Canada. Posted to CFB Moose Jaw, spent 7 years there. While there, I was honored to be a member of the Canadian Forces Snowbirds in 74-75, part of the maintenance team. I also got to fly with the Snowbirds everywhere they deployed to. And there I moved on and I went to Winnipeg and I worked on Hercs for approximately a year. And then I got posted to CFB Shearwater. I worked on the Sea King helicopters, and I was on 3 air departments in the Nipigon, Skeena, and Saguenay. I did approximately 5 years there, and I got posted into Coal Lake on the new F-18 program. I did 4 years there, and I was lucky enough to get posted back to Germany to CFB Baden. I was part of 409 Squadron. 409 Squadron was chosen to be the squadron to deploy on op friction due to the invasion of Iraq into Kuwait. We finally arrived at Qatar, which was our operating base. We originally went there with 18 F-18s and they increased them to 24. My job at the time was I was actually the servicing warrant officer. So I was responsible for the park, start, refuel of all the aircraft that were deployed. And our main purpose there was to do CAPs, which is called Combat Air Patrols. And the reason why we deployed the F-18s was to protect the Canadian destroyers in the Gulf. Well, when we got off the aircraft in Qatar, when we first arrived there, it was about 40 above, so it was extremely hot. We didn't know exactly what we were going into. They said there's a possibility that there could be chemical weapons, so we were also trained in NBCW. It turned out that they were not deployed, at least not when I was there. But the biggest concern was when the Iraqis were shooting off the Scud missiles. And there was a few that landed close to our base. That happened after I was there, but other than that, we were fairly safe, I think. What I was always so proud of is that I was in a squadron that was asked to be the first squadron to deploy. Originally, we didn't know when we were leaving exactly where we were going. We didn't know how long we were going to be there. So I was only there approximately 7-8 weeks, and then I deployed back to Canada. We were very fortunate that we never had any casualties, but it was important, and the people that I worked with, we trained for many years, and we don't always get the opportunity to do what we were trained to do. And I think that was probably the proudest moment, that we were actually launching aircraft that were designed to do what they were intended to do. To me, November the 11th, it always brings me back to my father, because my father was a Second World War veteran. My mother was a war bride. So that's the first thing I think of. And another thing, originally, because we served in the Canadian Armed Forces, didn't necessarily class you as a veteran. If you had served in Korea or earlier, you were classed as a veteran. Anybody after that point that did peacekeeping or whatever other operations, the government didn't recognize you as a veteran. So I was at one of the services in 2005, and somebody from a Veterans Affairs came up to me and said, "This is the year of the veteran, here's a pin." And that kind of impressed me, because we were not recognized as veterans, and we are now, and the new Veterans Charter did that for us. So I think just that lady coming up to me and giving me that pin, it just made me feel good, like, here, maybe I belong here.
Lieutenant Colonel retired Tony Engelberts. I joined the military in the mid-80s, shortly after I finished high school. Wasn't a lot of job prospects for younger folks at that time, especially in trades and other things that would have been up my alley, and I had always been looking for something with a little bit more adventure in life. So shortly after high school, I did the Summer Youth Employment Program with the Canadian Armed Forces, with the reserves, and that led me to really enjoy what I was doing. And during the Summer Youth Employment Program, I went down to the recruiting center and started my transfer into the regular force. I served with the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry 3rd Battalion from 1985 to 1989, and then transferred to the Royal Regina Rifles, and from there to the North Saskatchewan Regiment in the mid-90s. And over those years, I did a peacekeeping tour in 1988 with 3 PPCLI in Cyprus. I did 1992, 93, I did Operation Harmony in the former Yugoslavia with 3 PPCLI once again, and then 1994, deployed with 1 PPCLI again back to Croatia in the former Yugoslavia for Op Harmony Roto 4, and then I finished off my overseas time in 2001 doing an international military assistance and training team in Sierra Leone in West Africa. And I also did Op Peregrine in 2003 for the fires in Kelowna. So that was my operational service with the Canadian Armed Forces. During our time in the former Yugoslavia, we deployed over 40,000 Canadian soldiers, and we lost 23 during our time in operations over there. There was not a stable peace for us to keep during that time. There was a lot of ethnic cleansing that happened on all sides. The unstable peace did lead to the Medak Pocket, which was the largest combat actions the Canadians had been involved in since Korea up to that point in time. 2 PPCLI was the lead unit on that one, but there was a lot of soldiers from here in the city that did serve on that tour and were involved in Medak Pocket. We've all come to live with some of the impact. A lot of the soldiers that have worked for me over the years were deeply impacted by what happened over there. And I think anytime you're involved in an operation where there is some type of ethnic cleansing, and it has an impact on anybody involved in that. The 2 tours, I was in 2 different sectors, one in the north of the country and one in the south of the country. And the organizations I was involved in, we were responsible for patrolling very large areas. So we got to see more of the country, interact with more of the people, see more sights, do more things than a lot of people had the opportunity to do when they were there. Some of the images that I carry with me are some images of some of the most incredibly beautiful scenery that I've seen. The beauty is there if you watch for it, even in the middle of a war zone. Some of the friends that I made over there, still in very good contact, close contact with a few of them. When we do get together, we trade a lot of memories, relive a lot of memories, and they go from both the comical and even in some cases the absurd that happened, and but also we relive some of the more arduous times and some of the times of hardship, and kind of balance those two types of memories is what you need to do to be able to keep sane and keep things in perspective. I think Remembrance Day, one of the meanings for it for me, it's evolved over time. I was involved as an assisting officer helping one of the families of one of our soldiers that was killed in Afghanistan. And when I was interacting with the family, the biggest concern, and I've talked to other people that have helped families as well, and I think one of the biggest concerns that families have is, will their son or daughter, their loved one, be remembered? And for me, that's what Remembrance Day is all about, is remembering their memory, remembering their contributions, remembering who they were. Even if you don't know the person personally, it's important to find a name, learn a little bit about the person, and remember them. One of the key Remembrance Days for me is during my tenure as commanding officer of the North Saskatchewan Regiment, we did take a small party down and restarted a small, very simple service down at the Cenotaph downtown by City Hall for people that have been going there over the years, and the impact we had on that group of people who wanted something different, something more personal. The interaction I had with the people there, again, is something that I'll keep with me for a long time. That was a special day.
My name is Mark Kalinak, and I'm a Petty Officer First Class retired from the Royal Canadian Navy Reserve. The reason why I joined is actually pretty simple. I needed a job. My younger brother was in the Communication Reserve, and I was kind of thinking going that way, but I was a bit late. Then someone had mentioned, oh, there's the Naval Reserve. Went and joined, and for 23 years, never looked back. I started training in the summertime here at Unicorn. My first summer in 1990, I was out at Esquimalt doing my reserve training as a boatswain, which is basically your general sailor. One of my biggest experiences was on Soploy 91, where I sailed with HMCS Yukon. We sailed to Tahiti, New Zealand, Tonga, Australia, and Hawaii. We were in New Zealand for the 50th anniversary of the Royal New Zealand Navy. And part of it, we were doing exercises with other nations. What that highlights is the importance that as nations, we have friends and allies that we do need to work with. Not only do we give them experience and we also learn from them. After that, I spent one summer at the Fleet Diving Unit, which was a great experience too. One of the memorable moments from there is that I participated in a burial at sea. I was asked to blow the bosun call for casting over the side the ashes of a former diver from the unit, and just a pretty memorable moment for me. I sailed on HMCS Nipigon, where we also did some exercises with the Americans. And once again, anytime you get to participate with other nations, you get a common sense of purpose. Until about 95 is when I went and I ended up taking a course at Kelsey, and there things kind of changed for me. So a lot of my time I spent now was here at Unicorn, going up the ladder in ranks, working in different positions. As part of my stock and trade, part of it was working with small boats, so it was a nice fit. And the exercises you could do on weekends, or we would do a couple weeks training. Did it on both coasts, and my first experience out on the East Coast with Harbor Defense, we worked with some reserve units from the United States, which was a very good opportunity. As my experience grew and as I went up in rank, of course, my positions became a lot more involved. I had the great privilege of being coxswain for Unicorn from 2007 to 2010, over the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Navy. If there is a regret for me about something like that, it's that I never got the chance to do it again, because you do it once and you learn things and you want to try and put those into practice. What do I think is the role of the Canadian Navy? And just thinking about it right now, if you ever take a look at a train, and we're in the middle of the prairies, and you might think, well, what the heck is a sailor in the middle of the prairies, and we have a unit here in the middle of the prairies? Well, if you take a look, and you take a look at some of the containers on trains, you see sometimes Maersk. What's Maersk? It's a big shipping line. Canada is a naval nation. Yes, we do our bulk of the trade with the US, but we do it all around the world. And that's the importance of having the Navy. As a nation, a maritime trading nation, we have to project what we see as our interests. What is important to me about Remembrance Day? Well, sometimes I think about like the past, what people have gone through. My uncle was in the RCNVR in World War II, so there was a little bit of a tie there. Didn't really know that until after I joined, but just something that sometimes creeps up in my mind every now and then. And as for my most memorable moment in Remembrance Day, I was coxswain of Unicorn here from 2007 to 2010, and I had the great honor of being parade chief here in Saskatoon for one of those ceremonies. And just being a part of such a moment, such a ceremony, I didn't really realize it, because when you're in the moment, you have to perform your job. But when I look back on it, it's just, for me, it's just a precious time and something that I need to think back more on.
I'm Lieutenant Colonel Gillian Dooley. I joined the Canadian Armed Forces in the early 2000s. I joined when I was still in high school as an Army reservist. I had spent time before that in the Air Cadet program and saw the reserves, the Canadian Forces recruiting at a job fair when I was in high school, and I needed a job, and it looked like a very adventurous and rewarding job and kind of the best opportunity that I had at that time. And what I've found in my 20 years since then is probably my true calling, my niche, and one of the most rewarding careers I've had the opportunity to have. Throughout my career, I have spent time both serving full-time and part-time through the reserves. I have served full-time. I did 2 operational deployments to Afghanistan in 2009 and 2010 as the Psychological Operations Commander in Kandahar Province. And again, I deployed in 2011 and 2012 as a mentor for the Command and Staff College in Kabul. I came home. I did 3 years of full-time service, serving as the operations officer at Detachment Dunduran, just south of the city. Since then, I've continued to reside in Saskatoon, but I've served as the commanding officer both with the Saskatchewan Dragoons Armoured Regiment in Moose Jaw and currently serving as the commanding officer for the Fort Garry Horse Armoured Regiment in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I've also had the opportunity, besides our international operations, to deploy to the Arctic on a training mission to maintain our operability in the far north. And on the operation that I got to, or on the exercise that I got to deploy on, our soldiers did a 300-kilometer trek from Churchill, Manitoba up into Nunavut. And being able to experience the north of Canada was awesome. Some of my more memorable moments in the military, my deployments rank at the top of that, being able to serve and represent Canada and Canada's beliefs across the world and train Afghan soldiers has been truly memorable. When I was deployed to Kabul, I had the opportunity to train the first female officer in Afghanistan that went through the Command and Staff College. So that's one of my highlights in my career. And I think the second most memorable piece is being able to lead soldiers. Having the privilege and opportunity to lead Canada's soldiers is a privilege in itself. Being able to making sure that they're properly trained, that they have the resources to continue their training, and advocating on their behalf and making sure that from a welfare perspective that our soldiers are well looked after. November 11th, I think from a very young age, both my community, being in the cadets, my parents have always taught the purpose of November 11th and the act of remembrance. For me, when I joined the Canadian Armed Forces, that grew. As a soldier, the brothers and sisters in arms that I had now served with were veterans of peacekeeping throughout Europe, Somalia, Africa, when I was a young troop. That changed me when I deployed. My first deployment is probably my most memorable, November 11th. 2 weeks prior to November 11th, on my first deployment, a good friend of mine was killed in action. And on November 1st, I stood on the tarmac of Kandahar Airfield for his ramp ceremony to send him back to Canada. And 10 days after that, it was my first Remembrance Day, my first November 11th in theater. And the true purpose of Remembrance Day really changed for me that year. And it really became about the soldiers that are currently serving on behalf of Canada throughout the world, and the sacrifices that they were willing to make. And that connection between our soldiers past and present to those that are serving currently. Yeah, November 11th, 2009 is my most memorable November 11th.
We want to thank those veterans interviewed today. Now, we will join the official Saskatoon 2021 Act of Remembrance service conducted at HMCS Unicorn. The senior military representative is Commander Gary Greger, CD Commanding Officer. In tribute to our veterans, the Saskatchewan Aviation Museum will today be doing a citywide flypast during the Act of Remembrance with their North American Harvard. This aircraft was used to train Canadian pilots in the Second World War and beyond.
Welcome to our Silver Cross families, veterans, Armed Forces members, ladies and gentlemen. We are here today at HMCS Unicorn to conduct the 2021 Act of Remembrance Day Service. Today we are joined by Ms. Judy Budd, our 2021 Silver Cross Mother, representing all Memorial Cross families. Judy is the mother of Corporal Shane Keating, who died in September 2006 while serving in Afghanistan. We are also joined by Mrs. Ruth Bond Martinson, a veteran of the Second World War, who served in the Women's Royal Canadian Naval Service. Ruth, for more than 35 years, has been actively involved in the Maple Leaf Unit, the only all-female veterans group within Canada. Our Cenotaph Party is comprised by the Chief Petty Officer, CPO2, Anthony Boutin, born in Saskatoon. He joined the Royal Canadian Navy in 1993 as a bosun. He has served on various HMCS ships and is currently the Standards Chief of HMCS Unicorn. The Cenotaph Guard is comprised of Sailor Second Class S2 Colin Aspen, HMCS Unicorn, Corporal William Barrett, North Saskatchewan Regiment, Corporal Amanda Bulmer, Royal Canadian Air Force 17 Wing Detachment, Dundurn, and Constable Albert Brown, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Saskatoon Detachment. CPO Botin will now march on the Cenotaph Guard.
Cenotaph Guard, to your posts, quick, march! Cenotaph Guard, outwards, turn! Cenotaph Guard, present arms! Cenotaph Guard, rest on your arms, reverse.
Today, our parade is musically supported by a contingent of the North Saskatchewan Regiment Pipes and Drums, led by Pipe Major Craig Shirley. The band of the North Saskatchewan Regiment is the longest-serving institutional band in the history of Saskatoon.
Please rise for the singing of our national anthem. I invite you all to be seated. Dansez. Bienvenue, welcome. As we gather here today, we acknowledge we are on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. We pay our respects to the Indigenous peoples and Métis ancestors of this place, and we reaffirm our relationship with one another. I am Padre Nancy Buttinger. It is my honor, it is my privilege to welcome each and every one of you. Mr. Tucker, Mr. Cheveldayoff, His Worship, all veterans, members of the Canadian Armed Forces, spiritual leaders, comrades, CICs, and all of you who are here via Shaw Spotlight. Especially Reverend Canon Colin Clay, Korean War veteran, who was unable to participate with us today. We know you pray with us. We are a growing city of many faiths and beliefs. The diversity of belief is reflected across our Canadian population and in the members of the Canadian Armed Forces. For some, those beliefs may be shaped by prayer, by reflection, by meditation. In this service, please choose and enjoy the freedom to pray in the form that you require for your beliefs. It is on this day we honor those who served and those who died in order that we in Canada might live in this freedom. We recognize this servitude may also include hidden wounds of emotional and of spiritual pain. We see you and we thank you. We military chaplains, we recognize that we have gathered on Shabbat, the rabbinic high holy day, which means Rabbi Claudio was unable to join us today. We acknowledge during World War II the horrors of the Holocaust and the genocide of 6 million Jews. In preparing for today and reflecting in prayer, and with this prayer that has been provided by Rabbi Claudio that I'm about to share, my mind, my heart, while focused on this genocide of the Holocaust, I also continued to be connected and pulled to the cultural genocide of our Indigenous peoples of this land, especially the children within unmarked graves. It is this prayer of peace that calls us to more. It gives me hope for a future that requires work from each and every one of us. Eternal God, whose presence is over all of us, help us through our prayers and our deeds to be able to build trust in our world. We ask you to spread your shelter of peace over all dwellers of earth, all lands, all peoples affected by war or a fear of war, bringing calm to conflict and peace of mind to all who live in this fear. We ask you to grant safety to those who guard and those who watch, and skill to those who must make very difficult decisions, so that we may be always guided by the need to avoid harm to the innocent. May we, in our days, learn to overcome prejudice and anger, hatred and fear, so that we may learn to live side by side in peace and harmony. May your divine presence, your light and your love shine down upon our troubled world, comforting the bereaved, helping the wounded, soothing all pain, enabling us to raise our spirits of hope and understanding, so that in our lifetime we shall be able to know how good and pleasant it is for our brothers and sisters to dwell together. Amen. And shalom. Today our prayers and coming together and working on active peace. This is what thematically we've worked together. This involves each of us looking within to be able to explore where we can create peace. Perhaps this peace starts in our own homes. Maybe it's on the school playground. Maybe it's with our roommates, with a family member, a neighbor. Let us make peace. I now invite Reverend Mark True to read sacred scripture from the book of Micah.
In the days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills. People shall stream to it, and many nations shall come and say, "Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between many peoples, and shall arbitrate between strong nations far away. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. But they shall all sit under their own vines and under their own fig trees, and no one shall make them afraid, for the mouth of the Lord of hosts has spoken."
Please rise for the act of remembrance. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we shall remember them. We shall remember them. Please be seated. I invite Elder Diane Anderson to lead us in a prayer for our country.
Creator God, we pray. We come together at this time on a journey of healing and of hope through reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, to grow together in reconciliation of past hurts and betrayal of treaty, language, traditions, and relationships. We ask you, Creator, to guide and bless us as we walk our journey to grow together as nation in your kingdom. Hi, hi.
I invite Jagmeet Singh Bajwa to lead us in a prayer for world peace.
ਕਾਨੜਾ ਮਹੱਲਾ ਪੰਜਵਾਂ। ਬਿਸਰ ਗਈ ਸਭ ਤਾਤ ਪਰਾਈ, जब ते साध संगत मोहे पाई। रहाओ ना को बैरी नहीं बिगाना, सगल संग हमको बने आई। जो प्रभ कीनो सो भल मान्यो, एह सुमत साधु ते पाई। सब में रव रहिया प्रभ एकै, पेख पेख नानक बिगसाई। I have totally forgotten my jealousy of others, since I found the company of holy. No one is my enemy, and no one is a stranger. I get along with everyone. Whatever God does, I accept that as good. This is the sublime wisdom I have obtained from the holy. God is pervading in all. Gazing upon him, beholding him, we blossom forth in happiness. Vaheguru bless all with prosperity, health, wealth, happiness, and love. May there be peace in the world, peace in our families, peace in our lives, peace in ourselves. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
I invite Padre Nahatowski to lead us in a prayer in recognition for world suffering.
We find ourselves in a worldwide pandemic. Illness, anxiety, and death are prevalent. Health services and government fatigue are seen on every news channel, everywhere, every day. Confusion surrounds many of our thoughts regarding science, protocols, strategies, and vaccines. The world suffers as we live with this virus and deal with it according each to his own conscience. And beyond the pandemic, we live in a world with war, addictions, environmental crisis, abuse, prejudice, poverty, hatred, hunger, apathy. God Almighty, creator and sustainer of all, help us all, especially the poor and the vulnerable, and grant us a spirit of compassion and tolerance that we might minister to those who are less fortunate than ourselves. Amen.
I now turn the program over to the Citizens Committee consisting of Legion and Anavet members, as the wreaths will be laid at the cenotaph.
Today, 13 official wreaths will be laid. The 2021 Remembrance Day Committee would like to thank the many organizations, companies, and individuals who have purchased wreaths. All funds raised go directly to the Poppy Fund to support programs in our community. Their names are noted at the bottom of your screen. Representing Silver Cross families, Ms. Judy Budd, mother of Corporal Shane Keating. Representing the federal government, Member of Parliament Cory Tucker. Representing the provincial government, MLA Mark Friesen. Representing the municipal government, His Worship Mayor Charlie Clark. Representing HMCS Unicorn, Commander Gary Greger, CD Commanding Officer. Representing the North Saskatchewan Regiment, Lieutenant Colonel Dennis Sansom, CD Commanding Officer. Representing veterans of all conflicts, Lieutenant Colonel retired Tony Engelberts, CD, one of our veteran interviewees today in the program. Representing Métis and Aboriginal veterans, Chief Warrant Officer Albert Boucher, MMM CD, Army Reserve Sergeant Major, Army Headquarters. Representing the 2021 Remembrance Day Committee, Comrade Colin Pipard, CD. Representing Branch 63, Royal Canadian Legion, President Rod Holowati. Representing Branch 78, TVA, Royal Canadian Legion, President Marguerite Wolfe. Representing Branch 362, Royal Canadian Legion, President Bill Flair. And representing Saskatoon Branch, Army, Navy, Air Force Veterans in Canada, President Al Boyce.
Thank you for sharing in this commemorative moment with us, and there's more to follow. This service and this reflection, which acknowledges the sacrifices of the Canadian Armed Forces, members throughout history. We have lasting images of World War I, World War II, and the Korean War. And now we are creating new images of the new generation of service members, which include veterans of the Gulf War, those who served in former Yugoslavia, and still other images of those who serve in domestic operations and those who are fighting in the war against COVID-19. We enjoy great symbolism on Remembrance Day. Our emotions are stirred by sounds of a bugle, pipes, chimes, and prayers, and by silence. Our thoughts are impacted by the visual symbols of 11 o'clock, the cenotaph guard, the flags, the wreaths, and the poppy, especially the poppy this year. The 100-year-old symbol of the poppy. 100 years of this little red flower visually representing the act of remembrance and our spoken promise, we will remember them. I offer regrets for Imam Elias, who is not able to attend today because of a pastoral emergency. And now for the final blessing. May God be gracious to us and bless us. May his face shine upon us, and may he have mercy on us. Amen.
Now, Chief Warrant Officer Albert Boucher, member of the Order of Military Merit, a veteran of multiple deployments, will come forward to provide a tribute to our wounded. CWO Boucher has seen the realities of conflict, the trauma it inflicts, and the resilience of our armed forces members who deal with their wounds and injuries every day.
For the fallen, there are places for us to remember, honor, and mourn them. Memorials, cenotaphs, and monuments. And carved into the steel and stone of these memorials are their names, deeds, and the places they fought. For the wounded, their battles are carved into their bodies, minds, and spirits. Each morning, they rise to face the challenges of the day with what war has left them. They are the embodiment of sacrifice, and as such, it is right to honor them. There are those that bear the scars of war, the ones we see and the ones we do not. We commemorate them, and we have a duty to honor their sacrifice.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for God Save the Queen.
up guard, shoulder, arms. Sense up guard, inwards, turn. Sense up guard, fall, out. Sense up guard, by the center, quick, march. Sense up guard, hold.
On behalf of the Saskatoon Citizens Committee, I want to thank all here today at HMCS Unicorn for attending today's service.
Today, we bring you a unique reading of In Flanders Fields in recognition of the 10 decades of the issuance of the poppy. We have 10 readers, including a Silver Cross family member, past, present, and future members of the Canadian Armed Forces, who will recite John McCrae's poem, followed by Tanis Scherstabidoff singing Let There Be Peace on Earth. On behalf of the Saskatoon Remembrance Day Committee, we thank you for sharing in today's program. We look forward to returning to SaskTel Centre on November the 11th, 2022. It is our community's home for Remembrance Day. We leave you now with this year's rendition of In Flanders Fields. At the end of the program, you will note a series of websites where you can learn more about our veterans' role during the First Persian Gulf War and the former Republic of Yugoslavia, the Saskatoon Poppy Fund campaign, and for our veterans, websites for support programs.
Hello, my name is Mackenzie Bork, and my father, Sergeant Chris Bork, a veteran of 20 years who had served in former Yugoslavia and Afghanistan. On behalf of all Memorial Cross families, I would like to thank you for watching the 2021 Remembrance Day service. Taking this moment to remember the sacrifices of our veterans, those who still live among us and those who are no longer with us. I ask you to remember our wounded and injured and to recognize our responsibility in supporting them in their journey in healing, to recovery, and to resiliency. And now a poem that has not only come to represent November 11th, but Canada itself. Our poem by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, In Flanders Fields.
In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow.
Between the crosses is row and row that marks our place in endless sky.
The larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below.
We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow.
Loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields.
Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw.
The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die.
We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Begin with me. Let this be the moment now.